I'm Any New Province, and this week we're trying to find out if Bloodstone Goblin is possibly pauper playable. Bloodstone Goblin is a brand new creature from Dominaria. It costs 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior, and whenever you cast a spell, if that spell was kicked, Bloodstone Goblin gets +1/+1 and has menace until end of turn. Long gone are the days of red getting grizzly bears with downside. Bloodstone Goblin is not only a 2/2 for 2, but it also has a great ability. Bloodstone Goblin wants you to cast a ton of spells that have a kicker cost. That's an extra cost that you pay when you cast a spell for an extra effect. Only one spell really comes to mind as a playable pauper card with kicker, and that's Vines of the Vastwood. I think Bloodstone Goblin could go into an all-out Gruul aggro deck, but I prefer a little bit more consistency. That's why I've gone with this deck. Is it kicker? I'll start by breaking down the cards with kicker first, and I'm going to start with what's probably my favorite card in this deck. It's called Jilt. It costs 1 and a blue with a kicker cost of 1 and a red that says return target creature to its owner's hand. If this spell was kicked, it deals 2 damage to another creature. It isn't hard to arrange a scenario where you get a 2-for-1 out of Jilt, especially if you have a bit of counter magic backing it up on the way down. It's great because Jilt can also synergize by returning your own creatures to your hand. We're also running Goblin Bushwhacker, which is a little tight on the mana, but definitely gets the job done with all the creatures we're playing. Goblin Bushwhacker costs 1 red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior, and if its kicker cost was paid, when it enters the battlefield, it gives creatures you control +1/+0 and haste. We also have 1 copy of Blink of an Eye. It costs 1 and a blue with a kicker of 1 and a blue, and it returns target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If Blink of an Eye was kicked, you draw a card. I'm running a Blink of an Eye over the 4th copy of Jilt because even though it's a little less powerful, Jilt isn't good against some decks. Blink of an Eye will always draw you a card, and it's almost always online. Our last kicker spell is Burst Lightning. This is the promo version because I like the way it looks, but it reads, pay 1 red, deal 2 damage to any target. It has a kicker cost of 4, and if its kicker cost was paid, it deals 4 damage to that target instead. All of our kicker spells are fine on their own. They don't necessarily need Bloodstone Goblin on the battlefield to make them insane. Burst Lightning in particular, we have such fast starts that it isn't unrealistic to Burst Lightning your opponent to death after a few attacks. If burning with Burst Lightning won't get all the way there, we're also running 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. It costs 1 red to deal 3 damage to any target. Next, I'm going to go over our card filtering and card advantage spells. Because this deck can run out of steam unless you draw correctly, we have to do something to help its consistency. First, we have Preordain, which costs 1 blue and it lets you scry 2, then draw a card. It's just one of the most powerful card filtering spells in the pauper format. We're also running Ninja of the Deep Hours, which could be a spoiler about the Ferry package that I'm going to explain next. Ninja of the Deep Hours costs 3 and a blue for a 2/2 that has Ninjutsu 1 and a blue, which means you can pay 1 and a blue, return an unblocked attacker you control to hand, and put this card onto the battlefield from your hand, tapped and attacking. Whenever Ninja of the Deep Hours deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Ninja of the Deep Hours is just one of the most amazing card advantage cards that you have access to in Pauper, and not only that, it synergizes really well with Goblin Bushwhacker. It also synergizes well with the other main threat of our deck. This is Keldon Marauders. It costs 1 and a red for a 3/3 with Vanishing 2, which means this creature enters the battlefield with 2 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. When Keldon Marauders enters the battlefield or leaves the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target player. PDX1, whose burn deck we played for net benefits not too long ago, called Keldon Marauder, is essentially a 2 mana 4 damage burn spell. It is that in this deck most of the time, but if you can pick it up with the Ninja of the Deep Hours or a Jilt, you can just keep that burn coming. Finally, our deck runs a Ferry package. These work really well with spells like Jilt and Blink of an Eye and also Ninja of the Deep Hours, and besides that, it's just one of the most popular and powerful packages in the pauper format. It starts with Spell Stutter Sprite, which costs 1 and a blue for a 1/1 flash flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you can counter target spell with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. Spell Stutter Sprite is an awesome counter spell in this format because a lot of people are playing cantrips like Ponder and Preordain or burn spells like Lightning Bolt, so Spell Stutter Sprite usually has a target. We're also running Faerie Miscreants. They cost 1 blue for a 1/1 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, if you control another creature named Faerie Miscreant, draw a card. Faerie Miscreant is fine on its own. If you have multiples, you get to draw cards, but it also powers up our Spell Stutter Sprite and lets us get a Ninja of the Deep Hours down as early as turn 2. Then, when you replay your Faerie Miscreant, maybe you've got another one and you draw another card. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. It was pretty hard to put together because the speed of this deck is somewhat undecided. We want to be really fast, so we've got a lot of basics, but we also need the mana to be good enough that we can cast Ninjas and Goblin Bushwhackers on time. First, we're running 6 of the Pauper fetches, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse. They're functionally the same card, and they read: tap, sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. We're also running 2 Is It Boilerworks as our only other non-basic lands. We're running Karuz because we do top out at 4 mana technically, and we're cheating on our lands a little bit if we're hoping to achieve that. Finally, we have 7 basic islands and 6 basic mountains, lots of untapped lands so that we can preordain on turn 1 and run out our Bloodstone Goblin on turn 2. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. First, we have 2 Curfews. This can deal with a Rancor if it's coming down on our opponent's only creature, and it can also deal with a Boggle that we can't reach out and burn. We have 3 Hydroblasts for shoring up the burn matchup. We don't have any life gains, we need something to survive. We have 2 Electriceries if our opponent is going really wide with X1s. We have 2 Relic of Progenitus for nuking graveyards out of Dimir or Tron decks. We have 2 Stormbound Geists if our opponent is on Edicts or Delvers. We have 2 Gorilla Shamans for blowing up all of Affinity and Monarch's lands, and we have 2 Pyroblasts for trying to sneak through our big expensive spells through counter magic. And there you have it. Is It Kicker? We're going to take this deck live into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince this Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time. We're there every Tuesday night playing Possibly Pauper Playable decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.